So after reading this week's latest chapter of Tokyo Ghoul, it kind of makes you wonder what was going through the minds of Ishida's editors when he presented them with this week's latest chapter, because I can see them talking about it and being like, are you sure you want this chapter to have no piece of dialogue? I know we did that a few chapters back with 145, but you want to have another chapter with no piece of dialogue? Are you sure that is the right move to make, Ishida? And in all honesty, I think that was the perfect move to make for chapter 160. This chapter was phenomenal because it relied on the art, the emotion, the way the panels were laid out, and the facial expressions by the characters to move the story forward for this week's latest chapter. And when you sit back and you compare the two chapters with no dialogue, 145 and 160, 145 has no dialogue to basically show the ominous dread and just the looming threat of dragon as it grows and expands throughout Tokyo. But chapter 160 has no dialogue, and it really focuses in and relies on Toka's character to bring the emotion in this chapter and really drive the story forward as she is searching for Kaneki's body throughout Dragon. And this was a phenomenal thing to do, just to have Toka drive it forward just with pure emotion alone, because we got to see the drive and determination coming off of Toka's character that we know very well to be within her character. But we also get a rare opportunity to see Toka's vulnerable side, which is a side to her character that is rarely shown throughout the series. Usually when we've seen Toka's character, she's very strong-willed and determined. We get to see that in this week's latest chapter, but we have seen her also break down and cry. And we see that again in this week's latest chapter with her breaking down, screaming, crying, but still tapping into that determination and desperately trying to find the man that she loves, her husband, Kaneki. And the only other times we've seen Toka, show off these emotions whenever dealing with the loss of her mother and her father. So Toka definitely does not want to lose Kaneki the same way that she lost her mother and father. And the fact that Ishida relied on these emotions coming from Toka to drive this chapter moving forward without no dialogue, I gotta commend him for doing that, because just talking with you guys on YouTube and on Twitter, most of you guys really enjoyed this week's latest chapter. And even with the ending of this chapter, with Toka's desperation actually allowing her to find and stumble upon Kaneki's body, that's going to leave many people that are fans of Kaneki and Toka very, very happy. So let's just dive into this week's latest chapter, guys. Chapter 160, entitled Mourning. And this chapter technically does officially start once Toka enters the chapter. I know we have that brief shot of Marude, looking at Dragon, and then we see like the soldiers fighting back against the Kagane monsters, but those two sections are very simple, and I don't really need to go that well in depth into those two sections. But we start off with Toka, desperately trying to find Kaneki. She still has the metal detector in hand. It's still beeping like crazy, but once she gets to the exact location she needs to be at, she uses everything at her disposal, all of her power, to start digging through the Kagane. She activates both Ukaku wings and starts firing a barrage of Ukaku bullets. And I love this section and that one panel where she almost looks like an angel floating there with her Ukaku wings. Remember back to part 1 when she only had one good Ukaku wing, and now we're in Ri and she has 2 fully developed Ukaku wings? I love getting to see that. I know we've seen it in earlier chapters of Tokyo Ghoul, but I just love knowing the fact that Toka now has fully developed her Kagane. It's just awesome to see. But even though she is out of stamina and is left exhausted after using her Kagane, she is not ready to give up. She is ready to push through that exhaustion and is continuing to dig with her bare hands. That right there just shows the drive and determination that Toka just shows us in this week's latest chapter. And as we go through her digging, the facial expressions on her face really drive it home just how desperately she is trying to do this. And I love this specific panel where it's a zoom in on her face where you can really feel the emotion coming off of Toka, where you can see tears falling from her eyes and just how desperate she is trying to find Kaneki right now just to make sure that he is okay. But eventually, Toka ends up unearthing something from the Dragon Kagane, but it is not Kaneki's body. It most likely is a part of Kaneki's body, because once Toka reaches in, she ends up pulling out an arm covered in eyes. And I actually really liked this part of the chapter because I immediately made a connection back to Naruto Shippuden, because there was a character named Danzo who had an arm covered in Sharingan eyes. So I got a really good laugh from this section, and I was like, wow, it looks like Toka just discovered Danzo's arm. That was really, really funny for me. But when you're looking at Touka's face, she's terrified at what she just unearthed, but she's not terrified at the separated arm. She's terrified at what the arm is holding, because it is holding the ring that Touka gave to Kaneki. And this is the moment where she kind of breaks down and starts to cry, and despair just kind of flows over her for a little bit, because she's slowly realizing that if this is where the ring is located, that might not mean that Kaneki is located right below where Touka currently is standing. He could be anywhere in the Kagane. And you can definitely feel for Touka right now, because that is going to take a long time if Kaneki is currently not located right where Touka is. But Touka is a strong woman, so she uses this despair to push her moving forward, where she continues to dig and to search for Kaneki. However, her continuing to search and to dig deeper ends up activating the Dragon Kagane defense system, and more Kagane monsters start to sprout out all around her. And I gotta admit, Touka has been holding her own this entire arc. She is fighting back. I love the shots of her just basically punching and kneeing these monsters in the face. It is so cool to see, because you gotta remember, this woman is pregnant. She is a woman on the edge right now, and the fact that she is able to do this much damage while pregnant has been impressing me chapter after chapter. But Touka is still taking damage. She's getting hit, she's getting knocked around, she is bleeding, but she is still pushing forward. She is using that drive and determination and that hope that Kaneki is still alive to push past these Kagane monsters and to continue digging to look for Kaneki. But eventually, one of the Kagane monsters that really kind of looks like Slender Man to me ends up appearing right behind Touka, and almost appears as if Touka might actually not make it out of this situation. But we got a pleasant surprise when the QS squad moved in with Ure, Psycho, and even Matsuki protecting Touka. I love this shot so much, because it's almost as if Heise's QS children are now protecting Kaneki's wife and unborn child. Ure and Psycho both look back to Touka, and we even have this brief glance from Matsuki when she turns her head, looks at Touka, and then just immediately turns right back around. This right here, I think we all should know that Matsuki's love and infatuation for Heise has not gone away. It doesn't just evaporate just like that. But the fact that she's able to suppress those feelings, push them to the side, work alongside Ure and Psycho, and protect Touka and Kaneki's unborn child, this right here is a big step for Matsuki's character, and I loved getting to see that in this week's latest chapter, but it also has me curious how Matsuki is going to handle herself once Kaneki is awake. So once Touka realizes that the QS squad has everything under control and that they will be holding back the Kagane monsters, Touka just immediately gets right back up without exchanging a single word and goes back to digging for her man. And we are left off on with this chapter with that final double spread page as Touka is digging through the Kagane, rips it open, and she sees the unconscious body of her husband, Kaneki himself. This was an amazing chapter, and I think it's going to leave many Kaneki and Touka fans very, very satisfied with their reunion by the ending of this chapter. But now I am very curious to see where do we go moving forward, because with the recent news, we know that we are in the final arc of Tokyo Ghoul. So how many more chapters do we have until we reach the conclusion? But also, as it stands, Kaneki has not regained consciousness. He still hasn't awoken. So I'm really curious to see how Kaneki is going to handle everything. Will he be able to deal with the sins that he has committed? And will the character development we had with Kaneki talking with Rize transfer over once he regains consciousness? I am really hoping that it does, but also I am really looking forward to the potential conversations that Kaneki is about to have with Touka, with the QS squad, specifically with Matsuki, but the one I am really looking forward to is when Hide and Kaneki finally have that bro-to-bro talk, that conversation that many of us have been waiting for it to happen, but it all depends on when Kaneki regains consciousness. Anyway, guys, that is my review on Tokyo Ghoul chapter 160, a very well done and emotionally driven chapter of TG. Applause to Ishida just for constructing this overall chapter, and I'm really excited to see where we are going to go. And now I definitely want to hear you guys' thoughts, theories, and opinions on where we can go next. Leave them down in the comments below, and if you guys want to talk about Tokyo Ghoul outside of YouTube, feel free to follow me on Twitter, guys. A link from my Twitter can be found in the description below. I had a lot of fun tweeting with you guys and even letting some of you guys know that this chapter came out early. So if you want to be caught up with all of that, definitely follow me on Twitter. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. Until chapter 161 comes out next week, which most likely will be on a Monday. It's not going to come out early. That is going to suck. But until then, I'll talk with you guys later. See you later, guys.